There once was a tyrant. Hair dark as night, claws sharp like that of a tiger, and has a bunch of kids. No, really, she's Demon Zeus. Hello everyone, I'm Scared Titan here with another essay video. I made a post on Twitter, the abode of woke left-wing lunacy, asking y'all if anyone would be interested in seeing any of my summaries in my novels. After all, they don't have any visual method to getting any form of reach, except their views are through the roof on DeviantArt and Pixiv. Now that the votes are casted, I have now declared these videos have happened. Yes, everyone. There was no vote fraud on my Twitter post like that of Shantae vs. Shovel Knight DB. Wait, that was Jay. Anyways, now that that's been decided, I want to clear up a few things in my summaries. I will discuss each entry as they are. I will go from chapter to chapter briefly, and try to have as much information needed as possible. I will begin with the Tales of Misilleeka since it's the most up-to-date work with nicely typed and edited text so far. My older Synecdoche novels, aside from the Synecdoche World War and Godzilla vs. Synecdoverse, will have to wait. That being said, let's begin. It all takes place in Crystal Celestia, a sub-realm connected to Celestia, consisting of large sapphire shards, clouds, and a purple sky. Misilleeka was born as the daughter of both of a seraphim father named Livigrak and mother dragon named Magmatora. In this case, Misilleeka is half dragon and half seraph, though much of the non-human traits are from her mother's while having a humanoid body, which is that of her father's. Despite the celebration of her beginnings, the head of Crystal Celestia named Sakharok is not pleased with her at all and scoffs at their child. Infuriated, Livigrak debates him over Misilleeka's place in his regime. Eventually, Livigrak dared to say his daughter is more human than Sakharok, which causes him to get steamed.
Okay, I'm very steamed right now. I'm really pissed off.
After having a staring contest, Sakharok leaves their room, and this act for chapter 1 ends with the couple naming their daughter Misilleeka. Fun fact, the name Misilleeka was derived from the Turkish word Misilleme. The name itself was used for the sequel, Mortal Brothers 2022, Misilleme, a 2-season storyline which has a legion of criminals retaliating against Shantae and her allies, hence the meaning of the word in English. Retaliation is what translates from Misilleme in Turkish. "1,202 years have passed, and Misilleeka has gotten older now. In this small act, Livigrak trains her into flying and have been doing so. Throughout this exercise, Misilleeka has dialogue with her father about her performance. Livigrak mentions how she has made a few mistakes along the way, such as coming too close to hitting a shard, in which Misilleeka justified it as not as bad. However, as they argued, Livigrak did mention how he was just like her long ago. This gives Misilleeka some hope, easing any discouragement she had earlier. In this challenge, Misilleeka is tasked to beat her father in a race around the shards. Whoever gets to the gateway through the garden first wins. This resulted in a race where Misilleeka and Livigrak taunted each other, nearly making close contact with the shards themselves, as she tries her best to perform well, knowing her father's scolding of her performance prior to the race. This race ends with Misilleeka winning and asking how was it and was impressed with her success. The act continues with Livigrak explaining one event in his past where his allies negotiated with the Sleipnir dragon clan, and wanting to end the war with other planets. Sakharok disagrees and just wanted them dead. Misilleeka asks who was the advisor in all of this, and Livigrak replied Dugron. He was one of Sakharok's advisors, and only one to oppose his warmongering agenda. It eventually ended with Livigrak convincing Sakharok not to consider war after an intense argument. Livigrak hands Misilleeka an envelope, indicating that she is ready to participate in the Celestian Militia Academy, where many celestial species would partake in Sakharok's military force. 400 years later, Misilleeka enters an exam alongside her fellow classmates, including Sleeka. He was a slightly deformed dragon who comes off as cocky and insubordinate. It wasn't until Zolkar appeared. He was Misilleeka's mentor throughout her youthful years, a massive, lion-like creature with 2 horns, one curved outward on each side. In this exam, the students must defeat a Nexus Zornok, a three-legged creature with 4 arms and shards on its shoulders. The students fought the creature, and when Misilleeka tried to go for the kill, he slid into the Zornok's mouth and chewed him violently. Misilleeka saved him with the help of the other Seraphim and dragons by stabbing it and released the stubborn dragon. His wings were severed, greatly damaged. Once the exam was over, Misilleeka and her classmates lined up together as Zolkar got back and demanded who killed the creature in the exam. The immediate reaction was unanimous, and got Misilleeka to step forth. After Misilleeka explained how she managed to accomplish this task, Zolkar declares the majority of the class passed the test, except for Misilleeka. But showing pity for the injured dragon, Misilleeka decided to help him get medical help. 500 years after passing one of her first exams, Misilleeka enters a room where she must fight Zolkar in order to graduate from Celestian Militia Academy. In this intense fight, Misilleeka used all of her wit and fury to defeat her mentor. Making as many dodges and slides as she could, she threw everything she has to dish out at Zolkar. But as a fight ensues, he also uses his wit to trouble his student, going as far as bringing up her issue, such as her hatred towards Zakarok. This enraged Misilleeka and used her whip to choke her mentor after successfully ambushing him in fog. But as she did, Misilleeka worried over his life before she can pull off the deed, only to be tricked by Zolkar. This got de-escalated once she deflected his trick, melting his armor with her plasma breath and knocking his head down. After the fight was over, Zolkar congratulates her and declares her graduation. But before leaving, Zolkar points out about her issues with Zakarok and relates to her. He too hates him, warning her not to let anyone exploit her weakness. Just a few days afterwards, Misilleeka leaves Celestian Militia Academy. Livigrat congratulates his daughter's success, but this happiness would be interrupted by Zakarok, saying that her and Livigrat's condescending tone rubbed him the wrong way, and would want to make it look bad on them. Livigrat warned Zakarok to back off, but not before warning Misilleeka if she were to ever pull off an insurrection or any kind of violent retaliation, she'd be dead. Misilleeka noted herself of that. "1,300 years after Misilleeka graduated, she is part of the Celestian military. She enters a room where Misilleeka and other members of the group as he joked about Zolkar stirring his bowl into a bowl of netherworld energy, saying he was at his boiling point. It soon ended with Misilleeka interrupting and Misilleeka gave his rude remarks to her. He insists she is part of some sort of nepotism conspiracy with Zolkar, only to correct him that they're not even related, going as far as pointing out her help to him after Misilleeka was severely wounded in the exam. Misilleeka demanded she'd better leave, but not before Zolkar pops in and informs them about a mission on the planet Jolkar. According to him, Overlord Digalox is after the planet's resources and needs to be stopped. That is, of course, with a partner. This didn't sit well with Misilleeka and argued with Zolkar, which resulted in a heated argument over how he was treated for 1,500 years. It ended with Zolkar warning that the stubborn dragon will resign if he persists. And so, they go to Jolkar. Arriving to Jolkar, Misilleeka and Misilleeka press onward to the surface out of their ship's landing. They end up butt-hitting each other as their soldiers went out into the planet. But as they proceeded, a blast of purple energy slammed pretty close to Misilleeka, only to avoid it. Something wasn't right to her, and realizes that Digalox is attempting to kill all of her allies. She swoops all over the fog in hopes of finding them. Battleships fly across the air as they vanish into the fog. She swiftly and quietly takes out one minion at a time. Realizing that Misilleeka was incompetent, she had to take matters into her own hands as a leader. Misilleeka discovers a dragon soldier fleeing from a battleship and intervenes. Gordak is Zoldak's brother, and gets Misilleeka's help. They work together to overcome their enemies. Misilleeka will distract the ship while Gordak makes the final blow to it. They both agree to the plan and proceed on. Once she comes to a dead end, the dragon hovers over the ship and pierces Misilleeka's spear through it. Successful in their efforts, Misilleeka compliments Gordak for his efforts, trusting him to carry the deed. But if you think things were going well, you might be right. All but one. Moments after the mission was over, Zolkar was furious over Misilleeka's lackluster performance. Enraged by his defiant and incompetent nature, Zolkar demoted him to a pre-colonel. Zoldak watched Misilleeka and Gordak stand in silence side by side, thanking her for saving his brother's life, and admitted that he would be brotherless if she didn't. Knowing that, it gave Misilleeka relief that her efforts weren't at all wasted. But this achievement would only lead her to a more admirable spot in action as time goes by. "3,500 years have passed, and Misilleeka arrives at a desert planet known as Zukrami, mainly filled with deserts with blue gems and coal trees with gold on it. I'm sure the coal industry would enjoy that. Her mission is to investigate the Zyvirak Palace and find out what suspicious activity was prowling within the capital and its villages. Upon arrival, she meets Zoltan Jurkak and Princess Diatra. The Sultan grows worried about the suspicious activity taking place within his realm, and is torn on what decision he should take. Diatra tries to rationalize the situation by suggesting that the Jinn could be lurking in his place right now, and gets debunked by saying it's daytime. Misilleeka enters the throne room via through the window and bows to them. She said she was sent to explore his empire to investigate Jinn lurking within. Diatra budges in and volunteers to help, but Jurkak initially denies her request. They argued until Misilleeka agreed to take the princess under her watchful eye, and would keep her safe no matter what. As the day turned to night, Misilleeka and Diatra stood together by the balcony. The princess said that she loved her planet's sky, comparing it to an ocean, though she wished she could explore outside of it, and asked if Misilleeka went to other realms. Diatra asked if her life has been great, betting it was fantastic living a life of a military warrior. Contrary to her hopes, Misilleeka responded with a no, explaining that while it opened more opportunities to seeing other cultures, there are more enemies seeking power, adding that freedom can allow both good and bad influences to exist in the universe. But as they continued, a sweeping wind came through the maidens. Misilleeka and Diatra took their weapons out in preparation of the suspicious activities Sultan Jurkak was going on and on about. But as they looked around on the balcony, the Jinn made their strike. Misilleeka takes Diatra along with her and flies across the Zukrami capital to fight off genies. As they flew, one genie morphs into a feminine figure with long twig-like legs, puffy pants, bra, and black hair covering the head with only one eye popping out. She calls herself Saparax, Jinn of the Dark Gypsies. Waving her arms around, Saparax creates swirling tornadoes to fight off her enemies. Misilleeka and Diatra discussed what their strategy should be, and decided to find a jar, gauntlets, oil, and fire, the latter which Diatra can use her scimitar to ignite flames. After swooping through town in a matter of seconds, Misilleeka and Diatra gathered the materials they needed, as they attempted to evade Saparax's attacks. Rising back up, they prepared to initiate the lamp's imprisonment process, but were interrupted by a lightning strike. Misilleeka flies back up with the items intact, except for Diatra. Misilleeka pours the oil into the jar while keeping the opening up top with one of her toes clutched onto it, and falls down to rescue Diatra from falling. Successful in this last-minute distraction, Misilleeka and Diatra rise back up and ignite the jar's oil. With the gauntlets initiating chains into the jar, Diatra kicks the jar at Saparax, and the lamp's magic does the rest, sealing the genie into the vessel like a piece of cotton. Misilleeka grabs it with Diatra by her side. Their celebration would be short-lived, as more smoke swooping towards the palace, and chase after them. Misilleeka contacted Zolkar to bring in reinforcements. As they enter the palace's throne room, Jurkak is at the mercy of a dark Jinn preparing to snap his neck, but not before Zolkak crashes in from above and stabs the creature with salt coated on his sword and burns. But while the Jinn disappeared, this didn't end well for them. Jurkak died, and it left Diatra heartbroken. Things got worse when Sakrak shows up and angrily asking the princess what happened. She replied with the Jinn invading her home and her father's death. Sakrak assumes Misilleeka is at fault for the incident, but Diatra debunks his claims by explaining she helped Misilleeka fight off the Jinn. However, the leader of the Celestia's military would not budge, preparing to demote her, but Zolkar wasn't going to take it anymore. Zolkar stood in silence, defending Misilleeka. taking the demotion himself. Sakura leaves the throne room with the general now ranked as lieutenant, the same as Misilleeka is currently at. Misilleeka asks why he stood by in her defense. He replied that she was a student like no other and grew into a leader. If she were to rank higher, he would be her follower as she was before graduation. Moved by his statement, Misilleeka had no idea how her influence caused the majority of the Celestian military to admire her, side with her even. A few weeks after the incident, Misilleeka and Diatra visit Zucrami to see it in shambles from the invasion. With so many resources running out and the civilians injured, some killed, they're all at the brink of an uncertain end. Misilleeka apologizes to Diatra for what happened in the incident, but the prince is rebutted by saying that she's not to blame. Diatra asks if Misilleeka could let her people come to Crystal Celestia, implying that they'll be safer there because of the Jinn invasion. The Celestial Warrior was unsure of it because of Sakura. She asked why, and Misilleeka explained that while she'd love for her and the Zucrami people to come to Crystal Celestia, she needs permission to do so. Diatra persisted to come and offered to help those in that realm as well. After some convincing, Misilleeka eventually gave in to Diatra's request. She calls Zolkar to transport the Zucrami to Crystal Celestia. This episode ends with Diatra and her people being welcomed to Misilleeka's home. With Misilleeka's first episode done and over with, there's more to her story than meets the eye. To think that she would remain a hero for long is anything but. The next episode we'll go over next time will cover her transition from the hero role into an anti-hero. This is Obscure Titan saying thanks for watching, feel free to subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Over and out.